Spending
Good
as
morning.
far as the eye can see, is this budget part economic recovery and part attempted political recovery for the coalition government?
This is an economic plan to secure our recovery, Michael. That's what this is. This is all about ensuring that we come through the worst pandemic we've seen in 100 years, and that recovery cannot be taken for granted. There are more Australians working today than there was before the pandemic. If we had the same fatality rate that we've seen across the OECD from COVID-19, 30,000 more Australians would have perished during this crisis. We've come a long way, but we've got to keep going further. And this budget is about securing that recovery, because it can be risked, it can be lost, the gains can be taken away, just like we've seen in Europe as they're going into a double-dip recession. We need to keep going on the path that we have set ourselves. Over $300 billion already invested in this plan, and that has been upgraded in the budget we released last night. So that's about securing jobs, it's about protecting lives, it's about protecting livelihoods.
When you speak about risk, the big risk, of course, is the ongoing pandemic. Let's turn to the vaccine rollout. The government committing an extra $1.9 billion. And you talk in the budget papers about having a population-wide vaccine rollout in place by the end of the year. Does that mean every Australian will be fully vaccinated come December the 31st?
No, there are assumptions that go to the rollout. They're not policy settings, and we will continue to roll the vaccine out as we have been, and accelerating it from next week. We will see over 50s being able to go to GP clinics all around the country, to our GPs. We'll soon hit 3 million Australians vaccinated. We're already over 10% of the adult population that is eligible for the vaccination, over 30% for those aged over 70. So we'll continue to do everything we possibly can to ensure we're progressing that vaccination program. But more importantly, when it comes to our economy, the reason our economy has been able to perform so strongly was when we shut those borders, we've allowed our domestic economy continue to grow. That's what's driving our jobs growth. And so it's important that we secure Australia from the incursion of COVID-19 into the country, and it's important that we keep Australia within our borders open as possible, because it's those closures internally that can really risk Australia's economic recovery. And so we need to keep creating that confidence, providing that support. Australians have done incredibly well during the course of this pandemic, and we need to keep going, we need to keep going further, and this plan for our recovery will ensure that we stay on that course.
Prime Minister, Melbourne is on edge, as you would know, this morning, care of that a case of community transmission. And I know you talk about hotel quarantine being 99.99% effective. This came from hotel quarantine in South Australia. Isn't it time, and shouldn't it have been time last night for the government to at least commit to what the Victorian government is proposing to do, and that is build a separate Howard Springs type purpose-built facility? Where was the money for that?
Well, as you say, we've already invested in the Howard Springs facility $500 million. This month it goes from 850 to 2,000 people, which will enable us to be particularly bringing those commercial repatriation flights for people coming back from India. The Victorian government has put forward, I think, a very good proposal, and we're working through the detail of that right now. And so we'll work with the states and territories. Hotel quarantine is one of many links in the chain. And what we've seen, whether it's been in New South Wales, indeed Western Australia, Queensland, and now I believe what we'll see in Victoria, it's not just hotel quarantine, which, as you rightly say, 99.99% effectiveness rate. If there's any other country that has a more secure system than that, I'd like you to tell me who it is. But beyond that, it is the ring of containment that is by contact tracing. The Victorian second wave was not just the product of, obviously, a quarantine failure. It was the product then of not being able to contain it once it got out. Now, all the other states and territories, and I believe Victoria has done the work to ensure that even when these things occasionally happen, and they will, that we can move quickly to ensure that that is contained. And that's how we've been so successful. And I've seen the states and territories only improve their effectiveness on that tracing and testing, which ensures that we can keep Australians safe through COVID.
You could increase Howard Springs, though, to 3,000. That's its maximum capacity. It's only up to 2,000 at the moment. What's stopping you doing that?
Well, there's also used for other purposes, but we've got it from 850 to 2,000, Michael, and that's also a function of
what other purposes is it being used? Excuse the interruption. What other purposes is it being used for at the moment?
Well, it has been used for other purposes, but my point is it's also about workforce, Michael. I mean, a quarantine facility isn't just beds. It's actually about the workforce you have to bring to support that, and the facilities that need to be supported through infection control and the support services of police and others. So they are the things that need to be brought to bear in a quarantine facility, and those are particularly involved around our major state capitals where the flights actually come in. And so that's why it's important that we continue to work with the states and territories. So we've got a 2,000-bed facility. We're spending $500 million on that, as it was recommended to do in the Holton Review. And now we're working closely with the Victorian proposal, and we'll see how we can work together on that initiative.
Lots of potential election sweeteners in this budget, but you are on record, Prime Minister, of describing yourself as a full-termer. Full-termer means an election not until next year. Will you hold to that pledge to the Australian people?
The fight I'm in is against the pandemic. That's the fight I'm in, and that's what we're contesting this year, and I believe we will be for some time to come. It's the pandemic, it's the virus that threatens people's jobs and livelihoods and indeed their health. And so the only fight I'm focused on, the contest I'm focused on, is fighting this pandemic to ensure that we can protect the lives and livelihoods of Australians. I'll leave the politics to others. As I've said, elections next year. I can't foresee all the circumstances that can contribute to things like that in this country. But my focus isn't on that. My focus is on this pandemic. That's why this is a recovery plan to get us through this pandemic and get us beyond that. Australia is doing better than almost every single country in the world, and that can all be placed at risk unless we continue down that path, going further, ensuring that we're doing the things that back Australians in, because it's Australians, their efforts, their sacrifices, them keeping Australians in jobs, which is backed in by this budget. Lower taxes, incentives for investment, supporting our manufacturing industries, securing supply chains, building the infrastructure, investing in the skills and the training with more apprentices. All of these things designed to drive growth in our economy, to ensure that we can continue to keep Australians safe, that we can keep Australians in jobs and in work, and we can improve the resilience and security of our country into the future.
Prime Minister, we'll leave it there. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thanks very much, Michael.